US has declared war on cartels. Strikes are already picking up, and it doesn't seem like we'll stop at the boats this time. You see, just yesterday, Venezuelan Defense Ministry announced that 5 US F-35s were patrolling in Venezuelan airspace. As if this was not scary enough for Maduro, it seems the American firepower in Caribbean is increasing every single day. So let's get into all that in today's video, starting of course with President Trump's newest announcement. US is now at war with cartels. Here's more details.
And so they drafted this memo making this official to Congress. Part of it says, based upon the cumulative effects of these hostile acts against the citizens and interests of the United States and friendly foreign nations, the president is determined that the United States is in a non-international armed conflict with these designated terrorist organizations. The president directed the Department of War to conduct operations against them pursuant to the law of armed conflict. And the president just talked about this week.
If you try to poison our people, we will blow you out of existence, because that's the only language they really understand. That's why you don't see any more boats on the ocean. You don't see any boats. Around Venezuela, there's nothing.
Now, I do want to provide a little bit of context as to what this means, because I know roughly 40% of our audience is outside of the United States. So, the drug cartels were designated as terrorist organizations at the start of this year. That's not changing because of this memo. This memo is actually not providing any new information. In fact, it's just notifying the Congress of US being at armed conflict with a terrorist organization. This basically explains the legal rationale behind the strikes that took place against Venezuelan boats in September. The memo specifically mentions the strike on September 15th, which was the second strike. According to the memo, and I'm quoting, "The cartels involved have grown more armed, well-organized, and violent. They have the financial means, sophistication, and paramilitary capabilities needed to operate with impunity. They illegally and directly cause the deaths of tens of thousands of American citizens each year. Although friendly foreign nations have made significant efforts to combat these organizations, suffering significant losses of life, these groups are now transnational and conduct ongoing attacks throughout the Western Hemisphere in form of organized cartel. Therefore, the president determined these cartels are non-state armed groups, designated them as terrorist organizations, and determined that their actions constitute an armed attack against the United States." This was all directly from the memo, and the reason White House sent this is twofold. First of all, if you guys don't know, there's a legal debate going on here in the United States if the strikes are illegal or legal. That's because so far the cartels were considered criminal organizations, and that's why there were never any strikes before this year. But since the start of this year, they are a terrorist organization just like ISIS or Al-Qaeda. And we've been striking ISIS and Al-Qaeda targets for a very long time. Well, now it seems the strikes against the cartels are also gonna pick up. That's because this is what Secretary of War Pete Hegseth just tweeted out a few hours ago. So before this, US had carried out 3 different strikes. First on September the 2nd, then on September the 15th, and then on 20th. Now we had this one as the 4th one. This was the statement Pete Hegseth put out. Earlier this morning, on President Trump's orders, I directed a lethal kinetic strike on a narco-trafficking vessel affiliated with designated terrorist organizations in South Com area of responsibility. 4 male narco-terrorists were on board that were killed in the strike. No US forces were harmed in the operation. The strike was conducted in international waters just off the coast of Venezuela, while the vessel was transporting substantial amount of narcotics headed to US to poison our people. our intelligence, without a doubt, confirmed that this vessel was trafficking narcotics. The people on board were narco-terrorists and they were operating on a known narco-trafficking transit route. These strikes will continue until the attacks on American people are over. It seems there were two very big points that was emphasized in that statement. Of course, the big focus was letting everyone know that the intelligence did confirm that there were narcotics on board. But the second important thing he shared was that strikes will continue. These strikes will not be limited to just cartels operating out of Venezuela. You see, in the memo, US never actually named Venezuelan cartels as the target. It's every cartel. So we could expect strikes happening in other places like Haiti or other countries where cartels operate. In fact, this is something the UN ambassador Mike Waltz confirmed yesterday in an interview. He also confirmed that it's not just the United States that's involved in these operations. We have other South American countries who are also helping out. Let's listen to that statement.
Nicolas Maduro facing criminal charges in the United States, according to the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. He calls him a fugitive from American justice. Where is this going?
Well, look, I think the president's been clear. Secretary Rubio has been clear that these cartels, these gangs, these drugs that are killing hundreds of thousands, if not millions over time of Americans are a clear national security threat. It's a priority for the president and secretary. We in the UN Security Council just took action yesterday on the gangs that have taken over Haiti right off Florida's shores. These gangs are in coordination with all of these transnational groups. They're shipping drugs, money, weapons. They're destabilizing the entire region.
Will we be bombing those boats too? Well,
we just created, under the umbrella of the UN, the Gang Suppression Force. And two principles there. One, unlike the past, we're going to go on offense. When you have gang leaders like Barbecue that are destabilizing so much of our region right off our shores. But number two, the burden sharing. The U.S. shouldn't have to do all of this alone. So we have the Kenyans, Panama, countries from the region also stepping up. And that's a key principle of the president's America First policy is help out. And everyone needs to step up.
Decades ago, the UN was involved in military action. Would the UN support taking out these gang boats from Haiti that are bringing these dangerous things to our shores?
Well, that's the action of our great U.S. Navy, but they did just authorize, the Security Council just authorized yesterday to go a mandate and rules of engagement to go on offense on these gangs.
Well, this is where I think it's important to take a look at the firepower that US military, US Navy has moved to the Caribbean. Now, some of these we already have covered in previous videos, but it's important to pay attention to how much it has gone up in just few weeks. Of course, we have the strike packages like the USS Lake Erie, USS Samson, USS Gravely, USS Jason Dunham, and the USS Newport News submarine. When it comes to air assets, we have a lot of them stationed in the US territory of Puerto Rico. Another interesting point I learned today during the research is if Puerto Rico is ever under attack by Venezuela, it doesn't actually qualify for NATO Article 5 protection. That's because according to Article 5 terms and conditions, it only applies to all the territories above Tropic of Cancer, and Puerto Rico is one of US territories that's actually below Tropic of Cancer on the map or on the globe, and that's why it doesn't qualify for automatic Article 5. Now, of course, US can call for Article 4 consultation and get an exception, and that's likely what will happen, but I thought that was an interesting thing that I learned after looking at the terms and conditions. Anyways, let's get back to the topic at hand. We have 10 F-35s stationed in Puerto Rico, and these are important because Venezuela just shared that some of these were trying to enter Venezuelan airspace yesterday, and we'll get to that news in just a second. On top of the F-35s, we have drones, helicopters, and much more. We also have more naval assets and Coast Guard assets that you can see from the infographics on your screen. As you guys can tell, this is a lot, and this is where I want to share an interesting analysis that came out from Washington Examiner just yesterday. According to the article, the military planners believe that the assembled forces are now sufficient to seize and hold key strategic facilities such as ports and airfields on Venezuelan territory. The US military buildup around Venezuela should no longer be seen through the lens of purely counter-drug trafficking concern. The current deployment structure is just too big, too expensive, and too varied in capabilities for it to be designed for that mission alone. Well, interesting analysis for sure, and I'm sure few people will argue that the firepower we have in the Caribbean is very powerful. And this is where I want to look at the report that came out of Venezuela yesterday. Venezuelan Ministry of Defense claimed yesterday that 5 F-35s, likely from US Marine Corps, were detected by air defense systems operating within the Flight Information Region, FIR, off the coast of Venezuela. Now, this is a very, very provocative statement, and I'm guessing this is for the domestic audience in Venezuela because Maduro has been using his propaganda and trying to get more and more people to sign up for the military. But in reality, these F-35s never actually entered Venezuelan airspace. They were roughly 75 kilometers or 45 miles from the Venezuelan airspace. You see, according to United Nations, a country's territorial waters extend roughly 12 nautical miles off the coast, and these jets were well outside of that. What they did enter was the Venezuelan Flight Information Region, FIR, meaning whenever a plane enters this, they should just call up the Venezuelan air traffic control and let them know where they are going to, what their plans are. Now, of course, US didn't do that, but technically it's not illegal. Venezuela is trying to frame it as like, oh, they breached their airspace and it was a violation. But they didn't actually say that in their statement. They were just trying to get that information off by wording it so complicatedly. Well, Maduro also used this news to spread even more propaganda, and he published a video of Venezuelan forces moving a S-125 air defenses across the country to fight US F-35s. Here's the clip. Well, guess what? Yesterday, US Southern Command also released a clip of their own. This was US Navy and US Marines conducting a training. Take a look at this.
Make no mistake about it. What you're doing right now, it's not training. This is the real world exercise.
YouTube just dropped a mind-boggling announcement. It is paying creators $64 million per day. Why? Well, because YouTube doesn't have enough creators. That is why you see videos on your homepage that have less than 1,000 views, like this one right here. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that everyone should start a channel. But if you have ever wondered about starting a YouTube channel or a faceless channel, now is a perfect time. YouTube is paying creators millions of dollars every single day, and it's pushing newer and smaller channels now more than ever. But I'm sure you have many questions on how to start and grow a channel. We get questions in our email all the time from some of you guys. That's why we decided to put all our YouTube advice into one YouTube video for completely free. So if you're someone interested in starting your own channel, you can watch that video here on YouTube by clicking the link in the description or card on your screen.